Today, I want to welcome Robert Hunt. He's the accountability guy, and his company is Ref Dallas. His book is Nobody Cares Until You Care First. You know, Robert said something to me a couple minutes ago, and he said, I'm really the guy in the background that helps other people change the world. And I love that statement because it speaks so much to his heart, but it also speaks so much to leadership. If you're a leader, ultimately you're not changing the world because of what you do, but you're changing the world because of what you're equipping other people to do.
Mm.
And I think Robert embodies that. And so listen in. I think there's going to be some amazing lessons. If you hate accountability, you should bite your lip and listen. This is going to be important for you. If you love accountability, you'll probably shout out hallelujah at some point. But anyway, let's get started. Robert, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, nobody says they hate accountability. They just act like that. And we actually get a lot of praises for talking about how accountable we are, but actually we're just being responsible. There's a big difference between responsible and accountable. Just showing up, people go, I'm accountable. I went to work today. That doesn't mean anything. That just means you showed up. That's responsible. Accountable means you went to work today and you got the right things done and you did the right way with the right attitude. That's accountability. Because accountability in the simplest term is you own it. It shouldn't be a punitive statement. It shouldn't be like, I don't like when people hold me accountable. It should be something that you look at as the power and the strength of your success is true accountability. We need to change the narrative of how people look at the word accountability.
Yeah. Well, and I look at it in my own life. The 3 years ago, I was in a coma and my body was atrophying. When I woke up, I was in a wheelchair and couldn't walk. And while I was still in a wheelchair, I started going to this thing called Camp Gladiator, and I will be there this evening. And one of the reasons I will be there is I know people are expecting me to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other reason I go there is when I show up and I perform, they cheer for me.
See that's encouragement, that's peer pressure. These are all aspects of accountability. But if you didn't want to do it, you could just tell everybody you work out every day. Nobody would ever know if you don't go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing that I loved, as we were talking in the green room, the thing that I really loved about what you were saying is accountability isn't bad. You shouldn't fear it. You should
Right,
embrace it. So
right.
let's start with why. Actually, let's back up. You said something in the green room. You said that your life changed and your wife's life changed. I'm trying not to make that plural by accountability. I actually have no idea of what you were talking about, but I'm interested.
Yeah. So we in 2019, we were like most business people running a business for years and years, and it had kind of grown a little bit. It was trudging here and there. One of the consistent trends, even though the business went up and down every year, was we spent more money than we earned. And that's the American way.
Hmm.
And we got to a place where we owed $90,000 in debt, not counting the house or the cars. And I remember in 2019, we had our annual planning session. My wife was my business partner. And I said, look, what's this year going to be like different? What are we going to do differently? And we lined out all the things that we really wanted in our life. And what was really at the top of the list was we wanted to live a life that pleased the Lord. And all we did was fight and argue about stuff. We were angry at God for, not getting us out of debt by letting our business skyrocket through the roof so we could take all this money and pay off our debt. We looked at it like it was his problem to fix, even though we created it. And so we agreed that if by the end of 2019, we just hadn't magically fixed this problem, we were going to sell the house and start over. And that was a really scary thought. We had a beautiful home with a movie theater upstairs and gigantic with all the great things you want in a cool house, but we couldn't afford it. And we lived like we could, but we couldn't. So that year, surprise, nothing got better. And we just decided by end of September, it's a longer story than that, but you can read that in the book. But basically, we needed to sell the house and we needed to own it. We came to the realization that nobody cared if we were fighting all the time or miserable about our lives or heavily in debt or struggling to be able to be consistently as a couple unless we cared enough to do something about it. And we finally got to that place where the pain was so much that we were willing to make the change. So we put the house on the market, sold it, took a while. And we actually hired a financial consultant who'd come in and look at our spending habits and go, whoa, is that how you want to spend your money? It
Yeah.
was very embarrassing, very humbling, but we needed that accountability where we would show someone and go, well, I don't know where my money goes. And he'd go, well, I'll tell you where it goes. It was everywhere. So we sold the house in March of 2020 when COVID shut down the world. My son and I moved our home by ourselves because there wasn't much to move, beds, dressers, and some folding chairs, and nothing else would fit in this house that we started to rent back in March of 2020. Paid everything off in April and started over. And the peace and clarity that I got, that we got as a couple when we owned our junk and we made the right decisions was amazing. And
Yeah.
because of that peace and that clarity, I could see everything else in my life better. I looked at my health, I looked at our marriage, I looked at everything and said, if I'm not happy, am I willing to change?
Yeah. Well, and something you said in that, and I don't want to let this go by. You said that you brought in a financial counselor to kind of look
Yeah,
at.
yeah,
And one of the things that I see in, in working with clients is they're afraid of feedback that, they view it as critique. And maybe you could argue very well it is critique. But the thing that I try to encourage people is Michael Jordan wasn't brilliant on his own. He
right.
didn't have one coach, he had multiple coaches. He had a team of coaches. One of the best athletes of our lifetime
Yeah,
knew he needed outside voices looking at his shots, looking at his form, and providing that coaching so he could be better.
right, right. And if you're too arrogant that you can't let other people speak truth into your life, you've got a problem. One of the requirements to having true accountability is your life in your life is vulnerability. So I run a peer group for CEOs here in DFW. They've been doing it for 11 years. And I've watched the magic of business owners who are very successful, very smart, very competent, come into a room and say, I'm freaking out today. Today I've got this problem. I don't know what to do about this. And they're being honest and they're being vulnerable. And because they share what's going on, the other people in the room are going, yeah, I've done that before. Here's something. Make sure you watch out for this and don't forget to do this. And we don't tell anyone what to do, but we share our stories. And by you being real and saying, this is a challenge for me, this is a problem, you invite the kind of input that keeps you from making really bad decisions. Nobody can make a perfect decision all the time. CEOs have so much stuff they have to know, everything about cybersecurity and finances and HR, and the world's constantly changing. How could you know everything? But if you're willing to be vulnerable, you have the opportunity for real accountability.
I think something else happens when you do that. It's, and unfortunately, many of our decisions are driven by fear.
Yeah,
And when you come out and you name something, you say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. I feel like you neutralize the power of that
you
fear.
do. Absolutely. You have to get it out of your brain. It floats around in our brain and we feel anxious and we're not really sure why. And there's so many of those things that are floating around in our brain. That's why I encourage people to write things down. Because when you write down, you take it out of your brain, you put it on a piece of paper, you go, well, I don't feel that way. That's not that big a deal. We always say that the difference between stress and pressure is knowledge. When I feel stressed, if I add knowledge to it, I get the pressure to go get it done. Otherwise, I'm just in this panic mode with all these thoughts feeling around. So I need to write it down, look at it, and go, okay, I need to improve my cash flow right now. What do I do? And you take the knowledge of all the years you've done and all the employees who work for you and all the people you're working with to give you guidance, and you make a healthy decision. But you invite that input to get all the best pieces of that. And then that moves you to the pressure of getting it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And, kind of bringing it back to whether it's Camp Gladiator for me working out or whether it's a group of peer advisors, I'm in, a mastermind group. One of the guys in mastermind group reached out to me this morning and sent out on a group video chat. Hey, Craig, what's going on in this area of your life? What are you doing in this area of your life? And it's knowing that it's coming from a position of they really want my best outcome.
Yeah, right.
They really want that best outcome. That's a safe place.
Yeah. And well, the whole point is to surround yourself with people you can trust. And then when they say things to you, that it's spoken out of love. And we've spent enough years with each other, really listening to the challenges of business owners. Some of it's about our personal lives. Probably the majority of it's around our personal lives, our own head trash, or our own journey or issues at home, because that totally affects our ability to show up at work and make good decisions. So I've also taught them this idea about creating margin in their lives where there's room to think clearly. Because you get on overload, you make bad decisions. And we like to live on overload. We do it most of the time with our calendar. Often we do it with our health. Usually we do it with our money. And then all that just sucks our emotions dry. And then we're not able to make good decisions. So we need to create room in our lives for things to go wrong because they usually do.
Let's dwell on that for a minute because I'll be honest, that's an area that I've been looking at my schedule. I've been looking at that, and I don't feel like I'm devoting enough time where I'm either out for a walk in the preserve, thinking about problems, or pulling away to a different place and working through things. What does the margin look like for a business owner? And this is a problem. I literally, a half hour before we jumped on Zoom, I was getting off a call with someone else. And I just asked him point blank, I said, you seem enormously busy. You seem really hard to, it's hard to book time on your calendar.
Yeah.
And what's going on? And he said, well, I'm a business owner and I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And so, of course, I'm busy. How would you counsel him?
It really has to be held in light of what you want. One of the reasons in the book we did a satisfaction assessment. There's these two little wheels with pie charts in them, and you score your satisfaction because if you want a life that's super maxed out busy at work, you can create that. It's your life. But I would argue that a lot of times we end up trying to optimize the crappy life we have instead of creating the really great one we want. And so
Hmm.
if you say, well, I'm super, super busy, well, that's your choice. So there's four buckets in margin: time, money, health, and emotion. And so if you own your calendar, which you do, and there's only 24 hours in a day, if you book meeting, lunch meeting, that's your choice. And then there's no mental capacity between meetings to digest what you just went through, to answer the phone, to go to the bathroom, to get ready for the next meeting. So you show up at the next meeting distracted, not paying attention. Therefore, that meeting wasn't very productive. And then you go to the next meeting, you're already behind. So you own your calendar. Don't live life like that. And put into the bucket first the kinds of things you want during that day so you're productive, not busy. And the same thing goes with your money and your finance, your health. Did you get a good night's sleep, or did you stay up watching Netflix for 2 hours longer than you should have? Are you eating healthy? Are you going for a walk? I mean, you make all these decisions. It's all you. This is accountability. You own it. So if you're not happy with your health, do something about it. If you're not happy with the money, do something about it. Spend less. That's something we've learned in the last few years. We can get by on a lot less because we choose a life that we want, and that's easier chased with less pressure if I don't spend as much money. Then I
Yeah.
can give graciously and I can enjoy what I want to have.
Stephen Covey's book, The Seven Habits, I heard somebody quote that just in the last week. And one of those seven habits, I mean, and I'm thinking about it. For me to graduate college, one of the requirements was I read that specific book. I had a professor that said, I will flunk you. This course, it's mandatory for graduation. I will flunk you if you don't read this book.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But he talks about taking time to sharpen the saw.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I hear you talking about. And that it's amazing that a book that was written 30, 40 years ago, whenever it was written.
Nothing changes. It's always the same thing. And the reality is, if you don't have any mental capacity, it takes you an hour to do something that should take you 5 minutes. And the reason we're not creative anymore is because we're exhausted.
Yeah.
Your creativity comes when there's room to think. When I got out of debt, when Kathy and I paid off all that money, and we were sitting here in this home with no debt, the clarity of mind that I had was amazing. And the creativity and the confidence, I would never dream of saying some things to customers that I would say to them after I was out of debt. Because what if I made them angry and they left? What if I pushed them and challenged them a little bit too much and they quit the group? I had no fear because I had no debt. So your confidence is better, your clarity, your creativity, it's all better when you create room for a healthy mind. That's where creativity comes from, when there's room to think. We don't need more time, we just need more room. And that comes from us scheduling things wiser.
Yeah. Well, and the subject of fear came back up, right? So you were talking about how your internal fear was driving your behavior with clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what fear does. And I think back in the context of accountability, when you name that fear to a person or a group of people that you trust, that you know will hold you
Right.
accountable, you neutralize that fear.
You take away the power of that fear when you declare it. That's right. We say in our book, nobody can hold anyone accountable. So we use that phrase a lot of time, but actually we're dumping the power or the responsibility on them to hold me accountable. But in reality, if they ask you, did you go to your workout today? You could lie. Did you go to bed at a decent hour? You could lie. So there's no one who can ever hold anyone accountable. But if I want to be accountable and they will play with me, then I can say, hey, I went to bed at 9 o'clock. Good job. Way to go, man. And I get affirmation, encouragement, but I have to be honest enough. Leaders who want to be their best have got to surround themselves with people who will support their effort to be their best. You get to decide what that looks like. It's your journey. But if you're not surrounding yourself with other people, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to self-deception. When I didn't have other people asking me questions about my money, my time, my relationship, my faith, my health, it really got worse. But when people will ask you and you want to be accountable and you're honest with them, then you can do something about it. So that's the importance of that vulnerability.
I have a friend named Dan who I, if for no other reason, I would like to have Dan in my life just to ask me questions. He asks the best
Yeah,
questions.
that's a great friend.
And I find that his questions, he's not telling me what to do. He's helping me see what's right in front of my eyes that I'm missing.
Yeah, and that's important point. Don't tell someone what to do. Ask them what they want to do. I'm an executive coach. I never tell people what to do, but I ask them, well, what do you want to do? Well, how would that work? Okay, what would hold you back? Why aren't you doing that now? Have you ever done that before? And all I do is ask questions because if they self-discover the answer, they're more likely to do it than anything you tell them to do. And so there's power in them self-discovering. So I've moved away from the ego that says I need to look important and just to say, dude, what do you want? It doesn't sound like you're chasing what you want. Tell me what you want. Okay, let's work on that today. I'm very comfortable being in that role because I don't need to show how smart I am. I need to show how much I care. I love my clients. And by asking those questions and letting them self-discover, they get to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, let me give an example of self-discovery that I've seen in my own journey. So obviously sales and marketing, they fight like cats and dogs. And I'm a marketing guy, and so I've contributed to that dysfunction. And and I remember having sales guys saying, "Hey, we're hearing this from the customer. We're hearing this from the customer." They would provide that feedback to me back in the product line, and and I think many times I just kind of disregarded it. And they'd eventually invite me to go out on the road with them. And I'm sitting in front of the customer, I hear something, and I go back to the factory and say, I have met with the customer. It's like I went up on the mountain, I've got the tablets from God Himself. Here's what we
Yeah,
need to do.
yeah.
The smartest, most effective salespeople bite their tongue and say, wow, that's really good. I'm glad you came, Craig. The stupid ones say, I've been telling you this for 6 months.
Well, ego is a big trap. There's a great book by uh, a really sharp lady called Ego versus EQ and the emotional intelligence required to fight ego. But there's ego traps out there. And all my CEO clients have great egos, big egos, but they avoid the traps. We've worked on being aware of the traps, something like only surrounding yourself with people who say and think whatever you think. Those are traps that you delude yourself. So you could have a big ego. You just have to be willing to not get in a trap with it. But it is a danger point that we just want to be seen as the smartest person in the room. And really what I want to do is I want to get things done. I want results. And if someone else can be the hero, I'm good with that.
Yeah. Well, and that's back to leadership. Your job as the leader is to make someone else the hero.
Yeah. And especially working with business owners, they don't want me telling them what to do. And they know what to do. They're successful business owners. They're not looking for me for answers. How much cash flow should I have? What kind of inventory turns? They're not looking for that. It's a consultant. I just want to come alongside them and say, are you living the life you want? Are you enjoying your job? Sometimes the business owner becomes the lowest paid slave who works the most hours, makes the least amount of money per hour, has the most headaches, Hey, it's your company. Why aren't you having fun? You're supposed to have fun. I didn't have fun as I ran this business the first 6 years. And I finally had to get to a place where I owned it. And it's hard. It's hard being a business owner, but I'm having fun. I'm working hard, but I love it because I'm doing what I want the way that I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so help us understand the title of your book. Nobody cares until you care first. What's the genesis of that? What does that mean?
It's really that moment in your life when you look around and you go, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like whatever it is. That's why we have you take the assessment first. And when you declare honestly to yourself where you're not satisfied, then the question is, well, what are you going to do about it? And we always blame or make excuses or say we can't or just wait and hope it gets better. But at some point, the pain of where you are is so much worse than the pain of where it will take to go that you're like, okay, fine, I'm going to do something about it. And when you say to yourself, nobody cares until I do, that's the turning point. That's when you stop blaming or make excuses or saying you can't. We did that in our own lives. Nobody cared that our marriage was suffering. Nobody cared that we were angry at the world until we cared enough to do something. And then people came alongside of us and supported us in our journey. And we told our goals and what we're trying to achieve. They encouraged us and asked questions and cheered us on. And it was cool. And that included selling our house, going to marriage counseling, eating healthy, stop drinking all the booze every night. It was like every night, COVID, booze and chips, TV, booze, chips, TV. It was COVID. And I needed to break out of that habit. And so having people who encourage me, hey, you look good, and let's go on a walk together. People will join you in a journey of good things if you invite them in. But if you want to play a victim role and hold on to your junk, nobody's going to jump in and do it for you. Nobody cares until you do.
Yeah. And there's a step that you have to take. You have to put action, and at some point it's going to be painful.
Hmm. Yeah, we talk about that in the second half of the book. Once you've gone through all those excuses and you realize nobody cares, then you acknowledge the reality. We say it's like standing in front of a mirror naked, 360-degree mirror where you can't hide anything with black shirts, all these things that make me look thinner, you know. And then you realize, hey, this is gonna suck to make this change. We have a chapter called Embrace the Suck. And that's hard. But the reality is it's gonna suck to be a victim, or it's gonna be suck to be victorious. But at the end of the victorious suck, I'm a winner. When I stay a victim in the suck, I lose continually. And so it's hard either way, but I'm good. I like the challenge to improve my life. And then you find a solution, you make it happen. And it's exactly like that every time in every category I've looked at in my life since I've learned this philosophy.
Well, and I think I experienced that in one small way on Sunday. I mean, so Sunday afternoons, I often take a nap. This particular Sunday, I woke up and I felt like a wet noodle. I could barely move. I was exhausted. I wanted to kind of go back to sleep. And I was like, no. And I got up and I did an hour and a half hike in the preserve. And I came back feeling far better than than I did before I left. I didn't feel like what I mean, I just exhausted my body, but I felt more energized.
Yeah,
I think whether it's the physical limitations or let's say we're facing some barrier at work, something that we have to work through or something in the marriage, instead of running away from that fear and embracing it and moving towards it and working through it, I believe it leaves you more energized on the other side and actually more excited about the next challenge that comes your way.
it does. And you can stay at home in bed and feel miserable and you'll stay miserable all day. Or you can push yourself to do something to change, get out, get some endorphins going, get some vitamin D, get the energy and breathe in some air. And then you come back and you're better. So either you were drained all day and miserable, or you were drained for a half an hour when you went for a hike, but this pushed you through to a better place. We know what to do. We're adults. We're smart. We know exactly what we need to do, and we refuse to do it because we're not accountable, and we are used to playing the role of a victim. But if you had to tell everyone honestly the choices you made and let them know the reason behind it and what you're doing, they'd be like, "You're doing what?" But we don't tell that. We just kind of spin it and go, "Well, it's not my comfort zone." And I'm thinking about it. Well, work's been really busy. And all these lame excuses that hold us back as victims. If you want the life you want, you're going to have to own it and do something about it.
I think it would be impossible to end on a more powerful note than what you just said. That is so essential. It's own it and do something about it.
It is that easy. It doesn't mean the journey is easy. It means the decision is easy. When you finally get sick of where you're at and what you're not digging and all the things you're frustrated with, when you're sick of it, you make the change. The journey has begun and it's an exciting journey.
Well, Robert, what you're saying is just amazing, and people are going to want to reach out to you. How do they reach you?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website, nobodycaresbook.com, and there's a contact form and you can reach me and I answer every single email that I get, all two of them. So if I get, 1,000 emails, I promise you I'll answer 1,000 emails. You can also go to nobodycarespod.com. That's for like the podcast for your show. And if you put in the code word leaders in the contact form, I'll mail them a signed autographed copy of my book at my own cost because I want, if they really want to read it, if they're going to read it and engage and take the survey and all that stuff, I would love to give them a copy. I'm everywhere on the internet. You can find me on LinkedIn and other places, but I really want to change people's lives and I'm ready to connect.
Robert, that's very generous. I hope people take you up on that. Thank you for sharing that on Leaders and Legacies.
Thanks for letting me be on your show.